Today is A for Albanese.
We need a hat. Good boy.
The national discussion about early childhood was front and centre of the recent federal election campaign.
Are you stuck together? I'm sure it's going to unstuck.
Come on, do it for Australia.
Over the past couple of decades, caring for little kids has mostly been discussed as part of a broader debate about gender equity and access to the workforce, and as an area where the Prime Minister of the day needs to take a lead.
You've got this?
Labor made a $5.4 billion cheaper childcare pledge, its biggest campaign promise, determined to make the issue a strength rather than a vulnerability.
See that? Second slip.
But that perception that childcare is primarily a workforce issue and one that is the responsibility of the federal government all changed this week with announcements which contained a rare hat-trick of positive news. A huge new commitment from our two largest states to early childhood learning and childcare, some rare cooperation between state governments of different political persuasions, and policies which see major state and federal government reforms dovetail.
We're going to open up the box.
The New South Wales and Victorian governments have put themselves well and truly back at the centre of the early childhood game, both announcing multi-billion-dollar commitments to more childcare places and also an extra year's early childhood learning.
So many years ago, they decided that kindergarten should start at the age of 6. But today, we're bringing that 1 year forward for 4 and 5-year-olds because we know it makes a real difference.
Think about the economic benefits that come from all of those women being able to work more. It is all about the best start for the best life for mum, for dad, and for our littlest Victorians.
The packages aren't identical, but both seek to provide the same services. More state-based childcare centres, particularly in areas where there aren't any, and free preschool services offered with a doubling of the existing hours from 15 to 30.
Two states working together, leading the nation on revolutionary reform in our education system.
You always get more done when you work together, and that's exactly what this is about.
The move by the two biggest states will necessarily provoke a discussion about what other states and territories do and what the role of the federal government is in this space in the future. As part of its pledge to move towards universal childcare over 2 terms, Labor has already foreshadowed that it will ask the Productivity Commission to review the early childhood system. The Productivity Commission will now be looking at government interventions that are designed to boost both the supply and demand for early childhood services.
It really puts on the national agenda for the first time a proper discussion about responsibilities between the Commonwealth and the states in the first 5 years of life.
Former South Australian Premier Jay Weatherill has been spearheading a push for more resources and for reform of the complexities of the funding arrangements as director of the advocacy group Thrive by 5, established by Andrew Forrest's Minderoo Foundation. His former life in politics means he has a good understanding of the complexities that beset the federal-state responsibilities in the area.
Essentially, the big states, including New South Wales and Victoria, roll out their preschool system, leaning very heavily on the current daycare system. So they use the Commonwealth subsidy for childcare to essentially cross-subsidise their preschool. Whereas the smaller states like South Australia, Western Australia, Northern Territory and Tasmania largely do it off their own budgets.
One of the problems with the current emphasis on childcare as a workforce-related issue is that some of the people who would most benefit from childcare support and early childhood education, families and children who are reliant on welfare, often don't get access to these services.
If you've got other challenges in your own life, you really don't get access to the childcare system, and that means your children miss out on the early learning opportunities.
By putting the emphasis back on education, the changes also give the states the capacity to use their existing school systems as the basis for providing more childcare and education in areas which are currently described as deserts for these services. Research by the Mitchell Institute at Victoria University shows around 9 million people, or 35% of the population, live in one of these childcare deserts, and that there is a distinct correlation between wealth and childcare availability and cost.
They're in the growth corridors, so the outer suburbs, and not just outer suburbs in Melbourne, but growing suburbs at some of our big regional centres as well. There'll be some small country towns that have no childcare offering as well. It's not about replacing the private market, it's about dealing with market failure in many ways and giving people an option that they just haven't had.
The Prime Minister agrees that this is a significant issue to discuss when he meets with First Ministers tonight at the Lodge and tomorrow at Parliament House. And he puts it firmly in the camp of an area we haven't heard much about for some years: microeconomic reform.
We need to lift productivity in this country. One way that we lift productivity is through microeconomic reform. I want productivity to be front and centre of that agenda, and I'll be discussing that tonight, as well as no doubt we'll have a bit of a discussion about energy tonight as well.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 7:30's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.